Hello and welcome to Latest TV News. My name is Sam Morton and I'm going to be speaking to reporter and Brighton fan Henry Bryant about Albion's upcoming games against Nottingham Forest and AEK Athens amid a concerning injury crisis at the club. First, here are the top stories from across the county. A major high street retailer is set to open a new store in Bexhill. Fashion retailer Peacocks is currently advertising for a store manager to run its new branch, which is expected to be based at the former M&Co shop in Devonshire Road in the town. The advert, which appears online at simplyhired.co.uk, reads, "If you would like to be part of a forward-thinking business and have a job with excellent career prospects, we would love to hear from you." M&Co's store in Devonshire Road was one of a number of branches that shut its doors in April this year, after the fashion chain went into administration just before Christmas last year. M&Co, which was first set up in 1834 as a pawnbrokers in Paisley, Scotland, before becoming a clothes retailer in the 1950s, had a presence in Bexhill for more than 20 years. In April this year, Peacocks was reported in the national press as saying it was looking to open new stores in 20 former M&Co sites. A Hastings man has been arrested on suspicion of arson after a 99-year-old woman was taken to hospital following a fire in Bexhill. East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service said firefighters were called to the scene in St Mark's Close just after 9:50 p.m. last Monday. A spokesperson said the fire broke out in a first-floor masonette, which affected the first floor and roof space. The spokesperson said firefighters were mobilised from Bexhill, Hastings, The Ridge and Bohemia Road, Eastbourne, Pevensey and Burwash. At the height of the incident, 6 fire engines were in attendance. An aerial ladder platform and the incident control unit also attended. Police said a 99-year-old woman, a neighbour, was taken to hospital for smoke inhalation treatment and is recovering in hospital. A 26-year-old man from Hastings has been arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life, has been released on bail while inquiries are ongoing. Anyone with any information is asked to report it online or via 101 quoting 1457 on the 13th of November. Southern Rail and Gatwick Express services are set to be affected by strike action next month. Industrial action will take place across the country from Saturday, December the 2nd to Friday, December the 8th, with Southern and Gatwick Express services due to be affected on Wednesday, December the 6th. A different part of the country is set to be impacted by the strikes each day of the week apart from Monday, as the ramifications of the rail industry will be greater, as the left said. This is likely to cause cancellations, and Southern Rail has said it is waiting for confirmation on how this will affect the service. Additionally, an overtime ban may cause further disruption throughout the week. A spokesperson for Southern Rail said, "We are aware that the ASLEF union has announced that strike action will take place by its members. It has also been announced that there will be an overtime ban from Friday, December the 1st until Saturday, December the 9th. Train services for these days are yet to be confirmed." Christmas officially comes to town on Saturday the 25th of November, with a festive light switch on in Eastbourne Town Centre, organised by Your Eastbourne Bid. The town centre will be illuminated for the festive season to make the town even more attractive for residents and visitors to do their Christmas shopping. The official Christmas light switch on is at 6 p.m. on Saturday, with a local community arts group, Angelica Vocal Academy, pressing the button at the Terminus Road event. Your Eastbourne Bid has reinstated the lights from last year, covering all areas within the bid, and has also invested in a new display in Terminus Road, from Bankers Corner to Blacks. Sir Wilfrid's Hospice is said to open a new store in Polegate. The new store is one of 12 Sir Wilfrid's Hospice stores in the county. The new shop will stock a range of items including clothing, toys, a bric-a-brac, as well as new greeting cards, and will host a grand opening event on Friday, November the 17th at 10 a.m. And now Henry and I will be speaking about Brighton's upcoming games against Nottingham Forest and AEK Athens in the Europa League. Henry, after the international break, how would you assess Brighton's situation? Obviously they've had a few injuries, not many players featured in the break, so how do you see Brighton now after this break going into the next round of games?
Well, I think we needed that break, to be honest with you. You've got a lot of players that are tired, as you could see with that 1-1 draw that we had against Sheffield United. We just looked a little bit lacklustre, we looked a bit fragile after 45 minutes, where we sort of almost lost the game when we got a red card, and just the energy level sapped massively. So I think we definitely needed that international break, to be honest with you. We haven't had loads of people play, like you said. We had Ferguson that did end up playing, but he's injured his hamstring, and that's going to be a blow for us. But I think overall, it was a good time for us to recuperate and hopefully get some wins, because we've been drawing the past 6 games. We haven't had a win. So yeah, it's now time for us to bounce back and hopefully make sure that this counts now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Evan Ferguson. Obviously, he was struggling with a back injury before the break. So maybe some would think that he maybe shouldn't have played during the international break and to rest a bit longer. But obviously he did play. He's obviously a really key player for his country. And he picked up a hamstring injury, which is a real blow. And it's unclear at the moment how long he's going to be out for. He's obviously been a little bit injury prone in his Brighton career so far at such a young age. Is that a concern going forward, or do you think it's something which he'll get used to as he gets older?
I think he's a young player that wants to play, and he wants to play well. He wants to get stuck in, and he wants to take all the opportunities he's getting because he's a young man and he's playing very, very well at the moment. And there's not a lot of young players doing that. So for him, I feel like every opportunity he can get, he'll take. I think maybe a little bit of naivety to maybe mess out some of those games where he is probably feeling something in, a part of his body or has an injury that seems to be kind of festering. But I think that overall he's a player that just kind of needs to keep concentrating and keep making sure that he assesses himself regularly, because he doesn't want to have these injuries constantly, because he's a player with a lot of potential.
Yeah, and another player that missed the international, got injured before the international break and missed the games as a result was Karim Matoma. Obviously a fantastic player. He's probably not been at his best this season, as amazing as he was last year. He's obviously got set those really high standards.
Yeah.
But he's missed those games for Japan, and it's unclear at the moment if he'll be available for the weekend. But how important is he, and how is it important that he is back as soon as possible?
Well, he's such a quality player for Brighton. I think when you talk about Brighton and Hove Albion, the way that we play football, it's exciting, it's fast-paced, it's aggressive, and that is what Matoma is as an attacking midfielder, to be honest with you. He'll go on the wings to really push that defence and make sure that we get some clear-cut chances, and he's been the difference in a lot of games, especially last season. I think that now what you've got to see with him is he's been tired. The international break has probably come at a good time for him as well, because he was tired in the few games leading up to the international break. So hopefully, I really do hope that he can get back to his form from last season, to be honest, because he's had a lot of games under his belt. He's been playing in Europe, playing for Brighton, and I think now, hopefully, is the time that he can kind of recover from this injury and get back on it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've not even mentioned Lewis Dunk, James Milner, Purvis Estupiñán, Danny Welbeck. Seems there's such key players out. Solly March out for the rest of the season. How do you think Brighton will cope with these big players that are out? Obviously, we're not sure on Lewis Dunk if he'll be around for the weekend, but with two big games coming up against Nottingham Forest and Athens in Europa League, how do you think Brighton are going to be able to cope with them without these players?
Well, when you look at the players that are out, you're looking at leaders, you're looking at players that dictate their positions on the pitch. You've got Lewis Dunk, leads from the back, the captain, the Brighton boy. So to not have players like him in Estupiñán as well that did so well last season, I think they were just walls in defence that were unbreakable at times, and also the difference in games where maybe we haven't had the best performance. So at the moment, I'm slightly nervous, to be honest. I am slightly nervous. I think that we've had a lot of hype building up from last season. Obviously, we're still doing well in Europe. We're second in the group after a shoddy start, and there's a lot of pressure on us to perform, and I think that pressure's mounting a little bit more because of the fact that we're running out of players that are of the quality that we had, because a lot of them are injured at the moment.
And you mentioned, obviously, Nottingham Forest coming up, really tough game. They're in a bit of form. Got some really dangerous players in their own ground as well. And with those injuries, how do you see that game going? Do you think it would be a comfortable game or really difficult to test?
Well, I shook my head then, because, before the international break, their last game, they had a 3-2 loss against West Ham. They were away and they lost in the 88th minute because of Thomas Tuchel. So I feel like they were quite unlucky on that, and they had a really good performance after analysing the game. I think they're going to be coming back with a lot of tenacity, feeling like they can win this because they're at home as well. They're going to have that advantage. I think coming out of the international break and into a game like that, I think it's all set up to be quite a tough game for Brighton, to be honest. And with the injuries, like you said and mentioned, it's going to be one of those ones where it's going to be the first 10 minutes that really decides what's going to happen. Are we going to get our form? Are we going to be aggressive, or are we going to be a little leaky in defence? It's one of those ones that you kind of need to watch for yourself and think, right, let's see what's going on.
Yeah, and how do you see Brighton lining up for the game? What kind of players do you think will really stand out for them with the injuries they've got? Who really needs to stand up and and make themselves counted?
Well, I think Van Hecker, he needs to perform. He's been a rock in defence recently when we played against Ajax. I know we've beaten them 2-0 at home, 2-0 away to them as well. Van Hecker, in the matches we've played in the Europa League, he's really performed. And even Lewis Dunk has praised him at times in interviews, saying that he has been playing really well.
Welcome to this week's Goalmouth Action Podcast, where we take a look at all the latest goings on at Brighton and Hove Albion, Crawley Town and Sport in Sussex. I'm Matt Pole and I'm joined by Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford, Sussex Sport guru Steve Bone and Sam Morton, who covers both Brighton and Hove Albion and the Reds. This week we'll take a look at Brighton and Hove Albion's season so far, ahead of Saturday's Premier League trip to Nottingham Forest. Meanwhile, Crawley Town suffered a somewhat controversial loss at Barrow as one of last season's Reds heroes came back to haunt Scott Lindsay's side. We'll pick over the bones of the Reds' defeat in Cumbria and bring you up to speed with how our sides in Sussex did in last weekend's FA Trophy second round clashes. You can read all the stories we were talking about with videos and pictures online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can check out other great videos on shotstv.com and Freeview channel 276. But before we get started, Albion went into the November international break with a 1-1 draw against struggling Sheffield United. The Seagulls led for much of the game through Simon Adingra's wonderful early opener, but were left to a failure to convert their dominance into further goals. Sam Morton, how would you sum up that performance? Probably not the way Brighton wanted to head into the international break.
No, it wasn't. It was a really frustrating game for Brighton. It was one that they should have won. They were on top for most of the game. They got obviously a really early lead, which is exactly what they needed. You felt an early goal could really have set them on to an easy victory against a side that's obviously right at the bottom of the league. I think they were bottom at the time. And it didn't go their way. I think they had lots of the ball, a few chances they didn't take. But the longer the game stayed 1-0, the more concerned you were that Sheffield might peg a goal back. And obviously the red card was a huge turning point on the day. Dahoud, blatant red card, really. He kind of had a moment of madness at the time. And obviously it cost them. And Brighton conceded not long after that and couldn't find a winner. So a really frustrating draw. I think it definitely was 2 points dropped. And obviously extended their winless run in the league. So yeah, really frustrating. And obviously De Zerbi was very angry after the game and basically said he hated, or not hated, but disliked 80% of English referees. So he wasn't actually unhappy with the red card itself. It was just everything else, every other decision that went against him during the game. So yeah, really frustrating one for Brighton and not the ideal way to go into the international break.
Well, you mentioned it there. It does seem as if the game very much turned on the Dahoud red card, Sam. He, despite what De Zerbi said about referees, he must have been absolutely tearing his hair out at Dahoud's red.
Yeah, well, exactly that. And I think he must have been frustrated at the player himself for what he did. It was just crazy, really. I think just kind of a stamp on the back of the Sheffield player's leg. And you're not really sure what he's thinking at the time. But they definitely still had enough to hold on. And I suppose the injuries didn't help, though. I think they obviously had Lewis Dunk out from his injury at Ajax, and they've had all sorts of injury problems going into the international break. And hopefully that's given some time for those players to come back into action. I know that Estepinian doesn't look great. I think there's a picture on Instagram of his leg strapped up, and it doesn't look great. So he could be out for a while. We're still waiting for updates on Lewis Dunk, Tarek Lamptey, and it looks like Evan Ferguson played for the Republic of Ireland last night, even though he seemed to put his hamstring against the Netherlands. He came on as a sub again yesterday, so they're obviously not too concerned about him, which is obviously good. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see on Friday at the press conference what players will be ready after the break.
Well, you've kind of alluded to it there, Sam, but Brighton have now scored in 29 successive league games, but have now gone 16 without a clean sheet. The draw against the Blaze extended their current winless league sequence to 6 games, which is the longest such run under Roberto De Zerbi. That all being said, Sam, what have you yourself made of Albion's recent performances?
It's been a funny one because at the start of the season, they were flying in the league and they're not able to pick up 3 points in Europe. And then suddenly it's just completely switched. At some point in the season, they've managed to pick up form in Europe, get a draw and 2 wins in a bounce, which has put them in a really good position to qualify for the next stage. But their league form has kind of paid the price because of that. And obviously they're still trying to find that balance of the team. They've made lots of changes each game, but they definitely haven't adjusted as well as they would have liked to playing 2 games every week. So it definitely has been a tough learning experience for them, and obviously not at all helped by the injuries. I think they definitely will be looking at the January transfer market as an opportunity to maybe bolster the ranks in some of the positions, especially left back, which has been a real problem area, and maybe even striker with Danny Welbeck out for the foreseeable. Evan Ferguson is a little bit injury prone this season, and you wonder if there is an option to bring Dennis Undav back, because he was obviously sent out on loan. So there's definitely some problems with squad depth, I think, so far this season. That's not helped the situation.
Again, you've mentioned it. Brighton currently have almost a full 11 out with injuries. You've mentioned the likes of Lewis Dunk, Purvis Estupiñán, Danny Welbeck, but you've also got Solly March, Julio Enciso, Tarek Lamptey. The injury list is numerous. But does this excuse Albion's poor form at the moment, Sam?
I'd say it's definitely a big factor. I think they've obviously got enough to beat Sheffield United at the end of the day. I think they should have won on the day. They had a lot of injuries, but they still should have won that game. And they just didn't take the opportunities when they came. I think the goal was obviously unlucky, an own goal from Adam Webster. So it was one of those, really. I think it was kind of reminiscent of the pre-De Zerbi era, really, where Brighton would be completely dominant for the whole game and would somehow manage to drop 2 points or even worse. So it's a strange one, but I think if they start to get some of these players back from injury, maybe bring a few more players in January, I think it definitely will help. But I think there's nothing really wrong with the performances as such. I think in the league they've been performing well. They definitely should have got more points from the way they've been playing. So I don't think there's too much to be concerned about in that sense. And obviously their form in Europe is fantastic as well. Beating Ajax two games on the bounce, and you go to the Johan Cruyff Arena and comfortably beat them 2-0 in their own backyard. It just shows how brilliant Brighton can be, and I think that just shows there's no reason to be overly concerned.
You mentioned there, but for all the time that Brighton are in Europe, Sam, do you think critics, maybe not necessarily critics, but people will always say that maybe they're going to be overstretching themselves in Europe and this is just a season of trying to get up to speed with things, or is that, again, another excuse?
Yeah, I think probably a little bit of an excuse, but I think it's such a big opportunity for the club. It's a historic season. I don't think anyone's really complaining that they're in Europe. It's just the opportunity it's given the players, the fans, and it's just been incredible, really, to be able to travel around these places in Europe that they wouldn't have otherwise have been to. And I think they would definitely take that over the alternative, which is just to play Premier League every week. So I think it's just getting used to that. I think they're so new to it. The players are so new to that. And it will take a little bit of time to adjust to playing these European games and then having to refocus for the league. And I can't imagine that was easy. I suppose after beating Ajax 2-0 in the Netherlands, having to play Sheffield United on the Sunday with not a lot of time to prepare probably wasn't an easy task. I did ask Jason Steele after the game if that was a tough thing to do, and he said the players were fully prepared and they had enough time. But you wonder mentally where they're at after the highs of Thursday night. But De Zerbi obviously treated it as a must-win game, and he really was desperate for that win against Sheffield. So I'm sure he's been working really hard over the international break to fix some of those problems.
Albion currently sit 8th in the Premier League and in contention to qualify from their Europa League group. But if you could change one thing about Brighton's season so far, Sam, what would it be? You've kind of touched on squad depth. Would that be the main area?
Yeah, I'd say squad depth. I think if you could stop any injuries. I think when the season started, we were all saying how brilliant the squad depth was. We had so many different options. I think the fact that De Zerbi has been making 6-7 changes every week does suggest that the squad depth is really good, and he's got those options in the squad.
We're going to have a quick stroll down Steve Bone's score prediction corner. We'll start with you, Steve. Brighton away at Forest. Are we going to say a draw again?
I am going to go for a draw, because at the start of the season I was predicting draws for Brighton every week and they didn't draw any of those games. And since I've stopped predicting that, they've started drawing games. So if I go back to predicting a draw, they might win, if you can follow that. I'll go 1-1.
Sam, you said 2-2. Are you sure about that?
Yeah, sticking with 2-2. Yeah, an entertaining game I'm expecting. And yeah, Brighton will fall just short of a win.
Go on, Mark, give us an optimistic outlook.
No, not going to. I think Forest are going to win this one. I think Brighton went there at the end of last season, didn't they? And lost, I think, it was quite a poor performance. So I think Forest are going to win 2-1.
And then Crawley are at home to Harrogate and then away at Notts County. How do you see those two going in terms of scoreline, Mark?
I think they will beat Harrogate on Saturday. I'm going for a 2-0 win on Saturday. Notts County, tough old trip. They do very well to get a draw, but I think County might edge it. They won the FA Cup tie 3-2. I'm going to go for 2-1 Notts County.
Sam Morton, how do you see those two going for Crawley?
Very similar. I think Crawley will beat Harrogate 2-1. I think their defence is a little bit leaky, so I can't see a clean sheet. And then Notts County, I think a 3-1 defeat because it's a very, very tough place to go. I think they were a little bit unlucky in the FA Cup recently, but I can't see them getting much.
And last but no means least, Steve, how do you see it going for Crawley over this next week?
Yeah, not much different really, but I'm going to go Crawley 3, Harrogate 2 on Saturday, and Notts County 3, Crawley 2 next week.
Goals galore.
Goals galore.
Excellent. We shall wait with bated breath and see whether those predictions are right. Thank you very much for joining us this week, chaps. It's most appreciated as ever. You can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we have talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can watch more excellent videos on shotstv.com and Freeview Channel 276. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you for watching Latest TV News. For more stories from across the county, please visit sussexworld.co.uk.